Hi, I'm a retired Master Sergeant William Mohler, one of the last draftees in the Army. He drafted 40,000 after me, but my last draft year was 1971. I'm not sure they drafted anybody in 72, but quite a few guys did go in when I went in 72. Went in February 72, served 22 years in the military. Started off in Vietnam, went to basic training, AIT, and got orders for RVN. Didn't even know what it meant, Republic of Vietnam.
Yeah.
So I went to Vietnam, landed in Cam Ranh Bay, nice big explosion, woke us up that morning. They were bombing Cam Ranh Bay, 122 millimeter rockets and mortars. That was a good awakening. My duty assignment was right on the Cambodian border, in a place called Tay Ninh. So I served in Tay Ninh until September 72 and went to Fort Carson, Colorado with the 4th Infantry Division.
Wow. So, how did it feel getting drafted that late, especially? You must have known quite a few people that had gotten drafted before and so late in the conflict.
Well, the Vietnam War was going on since I was a kid. And the draft was something that everybody was used to by then. You know, the draft they started drafting World War I. It wasn't a real nationwide draft. You can get out of it for virtually any reason at all. And then it died, and then World War II, everybody got drafted. And after that, they just kept the draft on. And so it was just something that everybody did. And so you didn't feel outside the norm. I know before I went in, to buy a 3-2 beer in Kansas, you had to have 2 picture IDs and a draft card. And or there was a Social Security, driver's license, and a draft card. All the guys had it. So that, they were drafting all of America. Again, it was loose. You can get out of the draft easily. You go in there and just say, "Hey, I'm bizarre," and they'd say, "Okay, get out of here." There were so many guys that were drafting. College guys, kids got out of it. "Hey, I'm in college with 4 kids. Okay, we don't want you." So, being drafted is something everybody did. Now, Vietnam, on the other hand, by that time had a horrible reputation. We were losing everything in Vietnam, or if you don't want to say we were losing, we weren't gaining. And, the fight against communism was dying in America. We liked the way that we handled communism in Europe, with the wall, putting sanctions on Russia and all that. And we felt we could do that to any other communist country. We isolated North Korea. And so there was an idea about, hey, just leave Vietnam alone. And there was another idea of, hey, it's a French problem. The French started the war. They had lost Indochina to the Japanese, and then the Japanese left. It became an American territory. Then we gave it back to the French, and then the Vietnamese said, no, we want it. We fought the Japanese. So politically, it was like, okay, this is not the war to go over there and be a hero at. But when you go over there, the war forces you to be a hero at. So the attitude of Vietnam was like, oh my God, Vietnam. What the hell are we doing in Vietnam? And by the time I went, the My Lai massacre trials were going on. Walter Cronkite was singing the blues about, oh, we're going to lose in Vietnam. And all the blame and the hatred that America wanted to shed on somebody, they shed on the Army, on the United States Army. They met us at airports with like, oh, what are you doing back home? And, go back and crap like that. The Army system, though, is tried and true. So once you get into the Army system, you're a soldier. And so you ignore all that. You say, okay, feel about me what you want, but I'm still a soldier. So I blew it off and lied about it. And said, when I got back, I got my hair a little bit longer, still in the Army and all that. And people were like, whoa, you're over Vietnam? I was like, no, I got him after that. Nah. Just to avoid the conversation, just to avoid anybody calling me any kind of weird names, or the first question, how many people did you kill? Well, how about how many people did I save? That would be a better question. Combat's combat. And you always hated those questions, because when you're in combat, I'm not sure you're shooting and counting. It kind of doesn't work that way. The shooting is faster than any movie ever happened. Any ambush is 3 minutes, and there's a lot of bullets flying in 3 minutes. A lot of stuff blowing up. That's a long ambush. So that makes you hesitant to talk about it, because a lot of times you get ambushed, you know what's going on. Next thing you know is you're helping everybody wounded around you, and nobody's shooting at you. It's like, what was that all about? And where you might be at, you might miss it all, or you can be in the center of it. I've been in the center of it a couple of times. Whizzing bullets sound strange. It's a scary sound. But again, you get accustomed used to all that. After a while, you got to. But fear never leaves you, but fear of doing something now gets stronger and stronger. Because if you don't do something and you get killed, that's a sitting target. But if you do something and you get killed, then that's action. So. But, that's my attitude about Vietnam. It was an ugly war. 66,000 men died for a wall, and we built a wall and put their names on it. South Vietnamese now is communist. The French, through Michelin's the only people making money over there. We're importing Vietnam stuff, like big deal. Last time I joined the NRA, they sent me an NRA hat, said "Made in Vietnam" on it. It's like, okay. I bought a pair of gloves too, winter gloves, and got them home and said "Made in Vietnam" on my winter gloves. So, I don't know what we're dealing with Vietnam at all. That should be a China problem. That's their satellite, not ours.
You mentioned before how your first and second tour in Vietnam were different. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience in the first versus the second?
Well, the first tour we were fighting, and the second tour we were running.
Which years were those?
72 and 73 back to back. Oh. Yeah, back to back. In 72 we had the Great Easter Offense. We were going to retake all the cities we thought that the North Vietnamese might have. They were building tunnels under Pleiku. We didn't know it, so that was a mistry. And then in the middle part of 72, we said, wow, we really, really got to arm and fortify the South Vietnamese army and get them to fight. Instead of just having them in Vietnam being a standing army, we got to actually get them to fight instead of us fighting. And so we were arming the South Vietnamese. We were trying to teach them virtually retreat tactics, because now the North Vietnamese was coming down with armor columns, uniformed men, no more Viet Cong running around. The South, they all now put on uniforms, carrying flags, with an objective. They were going to take certain cities to keep Americans out of there. If we had a city with an American airfield in there, boom, we're going to take that so you guys can't fly around. So, and the refugee problem was just horrible. You go to Asia and see refugees on any kind of road, it's horrible. Everybody's running and everybody's dying. For some reason, refugees die. Whatever, being robbed, being raped, being killed by whatever side for whatever reason. You always see a lot of dead when you see a lot of refugees everywhere around the world. and Vietnam had its share. So that was the difference there. And still you're in the Army, and still you're like, okay, well, the fighting part of this deal's over. Now it's saving my butt's the main job. But I didn't fear that. America wasn't going to leave me there and just say, hey, you're on your own, even though the true strength was just greatly reduced. Somebody one time told me there was 200,000 men in Vietnam in 72, and then there was 1,000 of them and there were 73. Well, I know there was more than 1,000 in 73, but there wasn't. There was no consistent fighting force. I don't think there was any infantry division still intact, with all of its brigades and all of its artillery support and all the support that an infantry division should have. So it was like, okay, America, this is your time to leave. What else happened politically in 73? I don't know. Again, when I went back to Fort Carson, Colorado, and go to Colorado Springs after Vietnam is, wow, a night and day difference. You're sitting in the mountains with pine trees, listening to birds versus, sitting somewhere under a shelled out palm tree listening to artillery. So it was just like, wow, this is what I needed. So,
how did it feel at the end of your second tour when you knew you were leaving?
I was in an infantry unit where half the unit was drafted, and these guys were just serving out their term, and it was a racist army, and Fort Carson was dangerous, and we had so many draftees. We didn't draft the best, The Army was real racist then, openly racist. Not the officers and all that, but the enlisted were. But they were Southern drafted guys, fighting with Northern city guys, and that, there was all kind of names going on. But the draft put them together, and I served in the peacetime Army too, where we told each other, man, you better get along. We're a team. Knock that crap off. But you can't do that to a draftee. That's going to serve. Most draftees didn't even serve the 2 years. If you went to Vietnam, you got out early. You went to your basic training, your AIT, 1 year of Vietnam. There's your 18 months, and so you got 6 more months left. Some of these guys came back all strung out on heroin. Other guys came back and they were murderers. They talked about killing. They wanted to go back. They had it in their blood, and you could tell it. It was obvious that, hey, this dude here, he likes to shoot. Met those type of guys. Met some guys that were just in shock. You can tell they were going to have problems for a long time. We didn't have the word PTSD back then. Guys that weren't recovered, we used to just yell at them, call them bad names, and swear at them, say, straighten up. You're in the Army, cut it out. Quit thinking about that crap. And back then they would even tell you, we wanted you to have a wife, we'd issue you one. And so it was pretty hardcore back during the draft days, where when we became a professional volunteer Army, all that died. But back in the draftee days, you can go to the NCO club at noon, watch strippers, and drink 2 beers. Okay, that was legal. It was legal. What are you going to do for lunch? Oh, we'll go to the NCO club, watch strippers, have 2 beers, and nobody was counting your beers. And everybody was doing, the whole NCO club was just packed. And the officers club was no different other than I don't think they had strippers. And every NCO club around the world was that way. I went to them in Korea. They were full naked strippers in there. I went to them in Germany. They were burlesque type strippers. They were but they were strippers nevertheless in the NCO club. And around, I'm guessing, about 1976, 1977, there was a guy named General Minitry, and he became Chief of Staff of the Army. And he said, no more, okay? No more strippers in the NCO club. You guys quit drinking your 2 beers at lunch. And in the barracks, if you got any pinup girls, take them down. And don't use the walls anymore as a bulletin board. You know, if you're going to send a mess to somebody, send it to them personally. Knock that crap off. And he really straightened up the Army as far as us having manners. You know, now never stop the guys that like the strippers to go in the strip club. I never went. I don't like strippers myself. When I was 18, 19, and 20 years old, I thought it was a novelty to go in the NCO club and watch them, but I was 18, 19, 20 years old. I was a 19-year-old sergeant. You know, I got promoted extremely fast. And so, you know, I had the responsibility of now being a new teenage sergeant and also thrown into a man's world, like 3 years prematurely. A lot of eyes on me. So, you know.
You grow up fast that way.
Yeah, you grow up real fast that way. But it was a good thing. I liked the responsibility and I liked the promotion. And when we started getting rid of the guys that didn't want to be in the Army and the guys, when you deal with all volunteers, it's a different situation than you deal with draftees. You know, when I re-enlisted and didn't become a draftee anymore, you know, I even quit telling people, yeah, I got in the Army being a draftee and all that. And later on in my career, I met more and more guys that had been drafted that re-enlisted, and I thought I was an oddball. I thought, well, ain't nobody but me, you know, re-enlist after the draft. But, you know, I didn't have anywhere to go. I was, you know, I could have been discharged at 20 years old. Wounded, combat, veteran, big deal. Nobody's going to buy me coffee. I did save a lot of money because I didn't spend any money in Vietnam except for cigarettes and toothpaste and shaving cream and that kind of stuff. I didn't, you know, every once in a while I went down to the Vietnamese village and hang around down there all day long, $5. You know, that's what you want to do. And then I re-enlisted in a combat zone. That was tax-free. It was back then. It was $1,200, which was, my Lord, you know, when you're 20 years old, and you're looking at your bank already, and you've got, you know, I think back then I had all the way up to $3,000, and another $1,200 from the Army. Now I got $4,200. I'm single, 20 years old, and a sergeant. You know, it's like, oh, right on. You know, a brand new car back then was $5,000 to $7,000. So, you know, I could have bought a brand new car and still had money left over. So I was on top of the world at that point in time, even though I'd, you know, got thrown into an organization that's way bigger than me. You know, I endured it, went through it, and it, you know, it rewarded me. What has always amazed me is how they picked me out to be a leader, because I never thought I was a leader. You know, my father was real harsh on me growing up, and, you know, just told me, you'll never be nothing, and, you know, he wanted this strict Catholic discipline that I wasn't willing to do, and his was extremely strict and at times stupid. You know, he drank a lot, and you know, when I went in the military, I was going to be quiet, not say anything, just do my time and get the hell out. And for some reason, there was a leadership quality that those guys that were leaders saw in me. And, you know, I was always wondering, you know, how do you take a whole bunch of privates and pull somebody out and say, you're going to be a corporal? And then how do you take a whole bunch of corporals and pull somebody out and say, yeah, now you're going to be a sergeant? You know, there's something they're looking for that I didn't see back then. Where later on in life, you know, when I started promoting people, I saw, you know, I could tell a guy that could lead naturally, you know, with a good flow. So that surprised me at first. And, I made staff sergeant extremely fast. So, I think I was a 22-year-old staff sergeant. A lot of responsibility. You get 50-some men under you when you're a staff sergeant, and you're 22. And 15 of these guys are older than you. And, so, that was that experience.
There's something you told me about before, which I thought was extremely interesting, was the MP40 shipment. I think you said you were in Vietnam when you saw a shipment of them.
Yeah, I saw quite a few of them, several thousand of them. In Fort Benning, Georgia, there are several warehouses that we put captured weapons in. I remember seeing an old picture of a whole line of GIs shooting MP40s. They have, I know when I went down there for infantry training, they had us fire a whole bunch of assorted different enemy weapons. And so they have a facility that they have those in. Yeah, I've seen photos of GIs out at the range all shooting MP40s, and then they'll all be shooting something like a Swedish K, or they'll be shooting another foreign weapon. So they familiarized themselves with quite a few foreign weapons. And I think that by the time Vietnam was going on, and there was quite a few other machine guns on the market in different countries, and plus, Russia had just gone totally assault rifle crazy with their AK series. I think that the American Army said, submachine guns, why would we have those in storage anymore? And decided, ship them all to Vietnam. The most interesting photo I ever saw was an American helicopter rescuing out of a rice paddy a South Vietnamese helicopter, and all the South Vietnamese helicopter crews have gotten MP40s. That was an interesting picture I saw. But yeah, we issued them out by the cases. I mean,
you said you were actually there when you saw a shipment of them?
Yeah, I was in Tay Ninh, the city called Tay Ninh, and they issued them out. And I had a friend of mine named Sergeant Underwood. He was in one of the fire bases up north, around Da Nang. And he said there was MP40s up there. He had one for a long time. Back in Vietnam, he'd send me photos of it, and I'd say, well, I can get them, but I can't get ammunition for them because the guys that we were issuing them to were Montagnards and all these indigenous type of people that lived around the Tay Ninh area, which there's thousands of them. And somebody else was supplying the 9mm. The 9mm that I got was from the Australians, because I had a high power pistol, which is 9mm, because that, the 45 is just a failure of a pistol by Vietnam. It had just, its life had been wasted. You take a gun apart 5,000 times and the metal doesn't fit back together right. It rattles and wiggles and misfires.
How did you get the high power?
Oh, that's a standard issue for the Australians. And the Australians don't have a lot of good military discipline when they're leaving a country. They'll leave. They just get up and walk away, get on the airplane. And so they'll leave a whole bunch of stuff. I think they take their individual assigned rifle with them and get on the airplane and leave.
Oh, so you just found it?
No, they were right. Tay Ninh, since it was on the pinnacle of Cambodia, there was, at one time, South Koreans working that area. They had left by the time I got there, but there were still Australians in the area. And they had a base camp pretty close to us.
How did you like the high power?
Oh, yeah, it was a dream. Yeah, it was relatively new. I had more than 9 rounds in it. I trusted it. I shot it and didn't have any jams in it. The 45 I had was just a sloppy piece of garbage. It had been reworked so many times, and the barrel changed out and the bushings changed out. You can rattle it. It about every 3 shots it'd jam. And when you lose the trust factor in your pistol, it's just like, oh man, anything's better. and I'd lost the trust factor in that. And likewise, quite a few other guys that knew weapons, didn't like it. I knew guys never fired a gun in their life, just loved the M16, just loved the 45. It's like, well, that's the only guns you ever shot in your life. If you shoot an M14 or a 9mm pistol, you'll think twice about the 45. 45 is a nice gun when they're new or first issue and all that. They're a nice firing, nice clean gun, but when they're worn out, they're worn out, and the American Army got their money out of it. They had that thing in service. When I was leaving Hawaii in 1992, the M9 Berettas just came in. We had one assigned to us in the infantry battalion, and I don't know if it was the commanders or a medics or whatever, but somebody from our headquarters company had brought it up to the headquarters that I worked in, and we were all passing it around. And we were all like, oh, this is a godsend. We got the M9 over the damn 45. And so we played with it. But it had been approved in Army issue since 1984, but I didn't see it for 6 years later. And I was in the 25th Infantry Division, the unit that's in charge of the entire defense of the Pacific Basin, but we didn't get the Beretta till well after 92, not to all our guys.
You didn't feel like you were undergunned with 9mm instead of 45?
Oh no, they fought too many European war with 9mm. It's killed too many people. And look at all the troops still using it. And the Viet Cong were using 7.63, 30 Mauser round. And so 9mm is more powerful than that. So firepower to firepower, it's like, shoot, come after me with a 7.63, I'll come after you with a 9mm. So that was a more powerful pistol than what the Viet Cong had and North Vietnamese. And shoot a guy with 9mm, see what happens to him. He's out of the fight. He's wherever you shoot him, he's grabbing. He's going to drop his gun and grab wherever you shot him. That's sufficient damage. They call it the parabellum for a reason. And parabellum's Latin for war. Yeah. And since 1908, when it first got adapted, it's just been the mainstay until current day. So it's an old caliber, but it's a trusted caliber, and 115 grains, that bullet does a lot of damage. But yeah, 9mm is a sufficient combat round. It really is. If you can justify the American Army shooting a 22 caliber gun in combat, then you justify shooting a 9mm. That shell, if it hits the 22, when it hits your body, you're down, and it does all kind of weird stuff. You shoot a guy in the arm, and it ends up coming out of his heart. If it hits the bone structure and follows it, it's a ricocheting shell. It does a lot of damage when you hit a guy, but if he's behind a 2x6 or a cinder block, he's got you. You just can't penetrate anything with that M16. It doesn't have the impact we need in combat. So you're trading firepower for load.
If you don't mind, we can go forward towards Korea, because I know you were in there around 76.
Yeah, I was in Korea 3 different times. My first tour of duty, I was there in 1976, 1977. I was in a place called Chuncheon. I was at a missile command that operated Honest John rockets that were fired from the back of a 5-ton truck. Totally obsolete right now. It was totally obsolete then. They were ground to ground, but they could contain nuclear weaponry. So we had them. We were on the DMZ, and that was a pretty hard assignment. Winter was cold that year. We broke records and everything else. Second tour was interesting. Got over there in the last part of 79 and left in the very first part of 81. And during that time, the dictator of South Korea, his name was Park Chung-hee, was assassinated. and by his own people. It was a coup d'etat. And I even got an English copy of the newspaper that they were trying to print saying that he killed himself or some weird story that wasn't true. And I was part of the team that went into a building called the Chosun Ilbo in Seoul, Korea, and stopped the press from printing anything until the Americans could kind of stabilize the situation. We didn't know that, and he'd been the dictator of Korea since the Korean War. Real brutal, real strict laws, put South Korea back in the Stone Age, spent all his money preparing for the next war, which still has not happened. He was killed in 1980. This is 2021, so the war that he feared still never happened. But he got out of power, and the country kind of froze there that year. So got out of there. My last tour was in 82 and 83, and I was in this thing called CAMS, this Korean Atomic Management System. And I was in the Daegu Mountains in central Korea. And it was the weirdest assignment I ever had in my life. And we controlled ammunition all over Korea at all sizes, everything from pistol shells to atomic bombs, which didn't exist in Korea. But we have big caves with big steel doors and elevators and everything else, and it's not for 9mm ammunition, okay? And that's called CAMS, and they sent me there. And at the very end of my tour, they shut that thing down, and I don't know who took over the wartime ammunition supply. I'm sure the South Koreans did, but the base went from 2,500 men to 200 men by the time I was there, so they shut it down. That was an interesting assignment. So all three tours in in Korea were really interesting to me. And in between that, I had a tour in Belgium with NATO. I had worked with NATO a lot when I was in Korea in 79 and 80. So in between, what would that be? In between 80 and 83. Yeah, I was in Shape headquarters in Mons, Belgium, not the one in Brussels, but the one in Mons. And been a year and a half just touring Europe because they didn't want me to say a word. They didn't, I'd be invited to briefings and they didn't want to hear nothing from me. The English run NATO, and if you're an American in NATO, other than being a general, you're told just, oh, go here and sit down, and, here's a free ticket to some restaurant. Just sit over here and shut up. I'm like, okay, fine. That is absolutely fine with me, Do I still get to keep my NATO car? Oh, yeah, just shut up. Okay, fine. Yeah, international passport, go to Spain, go to Germany, go to Switzerland, go to anywhere I want to go, fine. So, my role in NATO was like, I did pay attention to if the crisis went down, what American forces would be called to Europe, but that was all speculation, all a guess, and nobody ever shared that information with me at my level. And so I was there holding an American seat in NATO, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know how much NATO changed after the Gulf War started and after, Afghanistan started, Iraq started. The Americans have sure got to have a bigger footprint in NATO now than they did during the European Cold War. I think the way that the Europeans felt about it is, okay, America, you're giving us a lot of stuff and you're in NATO, but if the Russians come, you won't be here in time. We'll be on the ground, the English and all that, and the French and everybody else in Europe, but you'll take a long time to get here. And that's not true. We were having reforgers that we were sending guys over there every year. And we were seeing how fast we could do it. We could leave them there 30 days and bring them back. And reforgers were going on. They're still going on today. I was on the first one of those. I was at, again, Fort Carson. Went on my first German-European deployment when was that? Right after I got back from Korea in 79. I immediately went to Germany on one of those reforgers. And they do work. We got over there in 3 days. Fully armed, fully equipped. Everything you needed to fight.
So when you were in Korea right after Vietnam, did you get a sense that maybe the North Koreans felt a little bit differently about America after leaving Vietnam?
Yeah. In 76 they killed at least a dozen guys in the DMZ. They even charged over the bridge and killed a tree cutting crew.
Oh yeah, yep.
And that was in 76. And then they shot down a helicopter that was on just DMZ reconnaissance, and that's. And I don't want to hear, well, they swayed over our line. Well, you guys sway too, and but opened fire on an American helicopter, and it crashed in North Korea, and we were going to go into North Korea that night. It crashed. You get those guys out, and then all of a sudden the North Koreans say, we're keeping the helicopters, and these guys are going to be released at Panmunjom tomorrow. And so that got called off. What else happened up there? Oh, somebody blew up one of our bunkers, and then we found a tunnel that was big enough to put a train in that had breached into South Korea on the DMZ. But it wasn't going to go anywhere. The Highway 1, which is the main intersection between Pyongyang and Seoul, it was 25 miles away from that. So I don't know what their future plans were for that, but we found that. So yeah, the North Koreans, once we got out of Vietnam, they were like, yeah, screw you Americans, it's communism rules and all that. And being in Korea, that was now the only country that's facing any of the communists, and so they had a heyday. They just went bizarre on us. Now, I don't know what stopped them up there. You're not supposed to talk about any kind of gunfire in the DMZ. If it happens, you're supposed to pick the nearest Korean soldier and say, "Thank you, man, or congratulations, good shot." But as an American. You're only supposed to shoot up there to defend yourself, for what that's worth. Yeah. But it calmed down up there for a while.
The poplar tree that you mentioned, were you there for that?
Yeah.
I think it's called the Korean Axe Murder Incident, but then it was Operation Paul Bunyan that they implemented afterwards.
Well, I remember this. Now, you caught me off guard on that, and I'm going to shoot out some names to you, and I might have this slightly wrong. There was a guy named General Singlob, and I'm positive that was his name. And I don't know what any of the operations was called, but where I was at, he'd put out a message that this damn tree's going to go. And they were selling pieces of the souvenir tree that the Koreans had wood burned on this. This damn tree's got to go, General Singlob. And so I'm not sure at what command level Singlob was. 8th Army is the highest command level in Korea. USARPAC in Hawaii is the highest command. Japan's the highest command level in that Pacific area. But there's other command levels too that I'm not that familiar with. I think Singlob might have been the 8th Army commander, which now controls more than just Korea. It would be, probably Japan, Okinawa, and stuff. But he had B-52s going over it, low level. While they cut down that tree and finished up the job. And, I remember seeing the B-52s, low level, go across the DMZ, and nobody shot at them, and we cut down the tree. But, that was wild. That was pretty wild. We didn't expect that at all. That that was just a routine thing that they were doing. That was over the Parmesan Bridge they call Freedom Bridge, and there's poplars all up and down there, and they trim them all year long. And the Koreans that in the wintertime cut all the branches off of them and wrap the trunks with rope, and that's commonly done, all the poplars there in Korea. But this one incident, the North said, we're coming over with axes. And I think what they did to fool us was that they looked like a work detail with axes that were going to trim up their side of the poplar trees. Because we had guys with axes on our side. And so they all came up there in mass on the bridge, and somebody blew a whistle, and then it was, the axe attack. But yeah, I was there during that thing. That was pretty scary. I thought for a while that something was going to happen. I didn't think anybody was going to cross the DMZ or not, but I thought there'd be a lot more fire on the DMZ than what there was. But there was enough of it to know that the DMZ was still alive and doing well. And one of the guys that I was there with in 76 had been there in 56, and he told me, "Oh, this place never changes." And, one of the what was he? A senior warrant officer of some kind. He said, "Yeah, I was here in 55, 56. He said, "This place hadn't changed at all." He said, "Maybe the sandbags are jostled around," and he didn't remember one of the towers that somebody had built a couple of years before I was there. But he said, "Yeah, this place hadn't changed at all." So the DMZ probably hadn't changed since I was there. All 3 times I was in Korea, I went up to the DMZ, and it hadn't changed over a 12-year span. So,
did you feel unsafe, like when you were close to the DMV?
No, shoot, I dare. No, you feel aggressive when you're up there. It's like, come on, try something, while I'm up here. No. There's an aggressiveness that you have to have in the Army. You can't always feel that the bad guy's going to get over on you. You got to make him worry. And, when I was up there, I told all my men, don't you worry about these little drafty 2-year, 4-year conscript North Koreans. They might be able to endure more frostbite than you, but the hell with them, And so we took an aggressive attitude, like, hey, the DMZ is ours, not yours. Dare you to cross it, And if you fire at me too much, you wouldn't believe what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to fire back, but it's going to be something that you don't like. And so you got to have an aggressive attitude up there.
Did you personally see any firing across?
Oh yeah. Everybody does up there. Yeah, you can't do it. You can't do a year on the DMZ without seeing something. Everybody does every year. And I haven't kept track of the number of GIs that die every year on the DMZ, but nobody ever talks about it. You don't hear about, hey, so and so got killed on the DMZ last week or something. 2 guys deserted when I was there, and I couldn't believe that. Like, why would you want to go to North Korea? But if you see these 2 guys, they were wimpy, Poindexter-looking guys that were, I don't know what they thought. They're probably some North Korean prison right now. They're still alive. But I remember they sent up an airburst one time. There were all these propaganda leaflets and showing this guy walking down Pyongyang holding this girl's hand. But if you notice the pictures, nobody else walking around Pyongyang, just these 2. And so he's already got a girlfriend, and I guess they showed a picture of one of Pyongyang's nice apartment complex that looks like nothing. Apartment complex in Pyongyang, which is supposed to look good to them. It looks 1950s to me. And so it was purely propaganda. And I never found out what happened to the second guy. But they shot, somewhere here I still have one of the propaganda pamphlets from the first guy, showing him holding that girl's hand in Pyongyang. And And that was the weirdest thing I ever thought. Who would go to North Korea? Especially after being in the United States Army. Like, man, don't you know they're not going to treat you good? And you're a private. You don't know anything. You know, even when I was Army secrets, you only know your piece of the pie of an Army secret. You don't know what everybody else knows. And so, what can they get out of a private? Oh, my sergeant. Well, okay, well then your knowledge stops at his rank. And so, you know, they can beat you half to death. You still don't know anything. So, you know, I would want them to get hold of me. You know, I've been on top secret NATO briefings in Europe, and I've been in classified briefings in Korea. I've been to the SEER compound training, which is for POWs, you know, how to exist being a POW and escape. And a lot of that's classified. So yeah, they can get a lot of stuff out of me, but not private. So, but they can take pictures of privates holding hands with girls, and they think that's going to have a whole flood of these guys running over like, oh yeah, I want a North Korean girlfriend. Yeah, I want a free apartment in Pyongyang. What the hell? You know, are you nuts?
That's funny.
And the answer is yes, you're nuts. I was surprised you even knew about that bridge incident. I thought. That
Yeah.
I thought that was so.
It's still going. Yep. Good.
I thought that was so non-discussed. I've told that story to a couple people. Like, I never heard that. You know, I even had guys tell me, "Oh, BS! I never heard that story." And I'm like, okay, well, it happened. You know, I was surprised. I even forgot what type of tree it was. She said the popper. But yeah, and that brought back General Singlob's name to me. And I'm positive his name was Singlob because I remember the Singlob tree, everybody. And I had a couple pieces of those. I never knew it was from that tree or not. And I was passing out some of my guys. Like, here's a piece of this damn tree.
Yeah, it's such an odd story. It sounds too too unreal to be true.
If I remember right, it was like in the fall of '76, because I got there on the 4th of July of 1976, and they had the whole Korea was decorated like America, you know, with all the buildings that we had patriotic things in there. One of them had George Washington crossing Delaware. It was just GIs painting all our buildings, stars and stripes on all of them. And when I got to the camp I was supposed to be at, they were having parades and all this other crap. I was walking in through the gate. You know, normally it's all secure and all that. And but yeah, I landed in Korea on the 4th of July, 1976, during the Bicentennial. So yeah, it was right after if I remember right, it's right after I'd gotten there.
Yeah, it was August 21st. 76.
Okay, yeah, I knew. It was right after I got there. It was hotter than devil. Korea is worse than Kansas in the summertime. Oh, you got all those rice paddies out there. And then you get all that humidity. And Korea is below sea level. Boy, does it get humid. And I remember going to the DMZ. We had to put on all that crap. Because we were heading up there, you know, the first thing you do is, you know, everybody heads to DMZ because we're thinking that the other guy's going to DMZ too. There was no rhyme or reason why they did it other than you guys got chased out of Vietnam. I'll watch. We'll humiliate you a little bit more. And so yeah, the North Koreans did get aggressive that year and the next year.
So you were there until 82 or 83 because Grenada was October 83.
Yeah, I just got into Fort Campbell, Kentucky with the 101st Airborne Division. I left CAMS, the Korean Ammunition Command, and I think I left there in 82, I'm guessing. And I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. That's 101st Airborne, but the battalion I was in was the 3rd Battalion, 187th Airborne. And one Sunday morning, I got a call. I was by my lieutenant colonel. He was like, Sergeant Mohler, I need you to come in the office and see me real quick. And I said, of course I had civilian clothes. It was Sunday morning. I said, sir, uniform or not? He says, uniform. I knew something was coming. I go, whoa. And so we had it was an 800-man battalion, and he told me, he says, I want you to assemble 500 men per company, immediate deployment. And I asked him, I said, where? I said something cute. I said, well, who are we going to kill this time? He says, I'm not really sure, either Grenadians or Cubans. I said, Grenadians or Cubans? I said, all right. So I contacted all the first sergeants, and I said, their unit strength is normally around 135 men, but you have alibis. You got guys in school, guys with pregnant wives, guys on crutches for some reason. And so I just told all the first sergeants, give me 100 men ready to go deployed. And they all asked me the same thing. They asked Colonel. I said, Colonel doesn't know. He said, but we're on the move. And so we locked and loaded for Grenada. And studied the Grenada thing. The American Army didn't do very well. The Navy SEALs got hurt. They had some operations go haywire there. We lost some helicopters there. I'm not sure anybody knew that they had armor there. And so when you use light infantry to fight armor, things don't go well. Certain aspects of the operations went well. Plus, it's owned by England. And here's Ronald Reagan on the radio, and he said something like, Maggie, I meant to call you up earlier, but I just didn't have the time, and that's what Ronald Reagan said about it. So yeah, the Grenadian thing, that was a 48-hour do or die. You don't have a week to figure something out like Grenada. You've got 2 days. You got that day and the next day. And they pumped in quite a few Marines. I will say that. I think they had way more Marines than they did Army. But then again, look where Grenada's at, and look where all the Marine Corps are at. So it was logistically feasible to get more Marines in there, and then you just back them up by airborne troops. And so that's how Grenada happened. Then where was I assigned right after that? I stayed with 187, and then I went with the 502nd Airborne at Fort Bragg. And that's when I was invited to Panama. Now, I'd been in Panama once before that for jungle training with the 187 Airborne, and now I was going to go to Panama with the 502nd Airborne cause trouble. And so, the American Army had been in Panama since 1900. So invading Panama and throwing Noriega out was really not a problem, providing we could find Noriega and providing we could stop the Panamanians from fighting us. Now that's an easy mission. You just kill a bunch of them, and then they know you're serious, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa. The American Army's down here with real superior firepower, and they're shooting. And so the Panama operation, other than the initial surprise and their initial reaction, went off real well. Somebody in the White House named it Operation Just Cause, and we renamed it to be Operation Just Cause.
I did notice the difference, or the similarities between the Just Cause and Just Cause.
We named it Operation Just Cause. And but the operation was actually called Operation Just Cause. So, a little Army spin to that one. But there again, the questions going out like, who are we going to shoot now? I mean, when you're in the military, and you're told to go into combat to do something, you can't be putting in there, well, I have certain feelings about Panamanians, I got certain feelings about Grenadians. You got to go in there and say, oh, who's the bad guy? And that's the way we talk to each other is we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And when we get there, we'll find out what the bad guys are doing, and we'll stop them. And that's the way we look at it. And so So when you're in the military, you just got to be mission focused about, who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, and just stay with that, And again, the guys that will pull a trigger doing their job versus the guys that pull triggers and they get off on it. I met those guys. One thing about the peacetime Army, I didn't meet any killers. And I met some tough guys. I met some real tough guys. I was interviewed twice to be a member of the Delta Force, and the guys that interviewed me just like, I told them both, I could never do that. I could be a ranger, I can jump out of airplanes and all that, but I can't be a Delta Force guy. And they were like, well, we got different teams and you'll fit in. And I'm like, no, you guys are just, that's one level beyond me. And you all see the guys that sent down to interview you. Wow. These guys are like Arnold Schwarzenegger interviewing you. Hey, we looked at your 201 file. We want you. And you're like, oh, no. No, I can't do that. That's too much. But, my 201 file drew the attention to the Delta Force twice in my MOS. And it's a mandatory interview. When they show up at the fort that you're at, they'll send out names to the people they want to interview, and they'll let you know it. Don't miss it. You will go. And I was honest with them too. I said, man, I'm hardcore and I'm Army, and a lot of things don't scare me, and I've been through any kind of weather that you can dream of, but I can't go what you guys go through. I mean, that's just, too much hardcore training there. I know my limits. I don't want to get into something that I'm going to fail at. I don't want to get in. One guy even told me, why don't you get in there and try? I said, yeah, well, if it doesn't work out, I fail. And, I haven't been a failure so far in the military, and I don't want you guys to be my first, brick wall. And so I told him, I'm honored, especially when I was in Hawaii. They talked to me when I was with the 25th Division. I said, I'm honored you guys picked me and want to talk to me, but this is who I am, and you guys must be looking for somebody else. And they're not. They'll train, anybody that meets up with their profile. And later on, I met some ex-Delta Force guys, and I was like, I thought you guys were all 6'5". I'm like, well, no, you just got to endure all the training. Well, I couldn't endure it. I didn't want to try to endure it,
So going back to your time in Grenada, did you encounter any students? Because that's sort of the big...
No, not me, and that wasn't my mission. And I'm not even sure where they were at. Grenada, if you look at it, kind of looks like Connecticut. It's got an isthmus to it that has a lot of cities on, that would be the leeward side, and they also have a lot of cities on the wayward side. And I think that the school was in the middle on the north. And there was two primary nice roads going to that and also going across the island. The Army's job was to secure the leeward side of the island, where the SEALs and the Marines had the forward side of the island. And another Army force, I think from the 82nd, they jumped in close enough to get the students, but I wasn't part of that. There's people all over Grenada at that time, because you got vessels stop coming in and out of there. You got airplanes stop going in and out. You got to find out where all the military barracks are at, because you don't know what they're using for barracks. They don't look like, they don't necessarily have to be in a camp. They can say, hey, we want this company to stay in this hotel. I've done that before. And so that was kind of our job, is like, okay, where are they, everybody? We knew the Cubans were on the airstrip. We didn't know how much Cuban firepower there was or how many Cubans, and that was wrong. They had way more Cubans than anybody ever thought. I heard there was Russian advisors there. I didn't see any. None of them came up to see me and said, hey, I'm a Russian advisor. So no, I don't know about the students. I think I heard about them like immediately when I got there, that, hey, the students are now. No, what I heard was that the university where they were at had been surrounded, and there was some kind of police station pretty close there that they got some problems with, and they had taken over this police station and secured the university. And I heard that just right after I'd gotten there. And we were like, oh yeah, is this thing over yet with yet? And like, no, we got to get all the Cubans out of here. They're not going to build the airstrip. And then I kept on asking each other, why aren't the English concerned about this? And I think it was the Cubans were escalating it to a point that, when they got the students now all kidnapped, that was the breaking point. And I'm not sure if England would have done anything military or not, because there wasn't any English citizens involved. And yeah, I remember the radio. We had heard over the radio Ronald Reagan's talk with Margaret Thatcher. He called her Maggie. Well, Maggie, I probably should have called you before I started all this, but I just didn't have the time. I hope you understand, that Ronald Reagan imagined while we were in Grenada, he apologized for invading one of her territories.
That's something.
Is that invading England or what? Huh? Is that invading England? That's what we were all saying. And all the Grenadians speak with that heavy English accent. They've been taught English by English teachers, and so they all have that, the king's draw to themselves.
Oh, yeah. Speak the Queen's English.
Yeah, just like they would do but not the Bahamas, but in like St. John's, St. Croix, in those places, they speak the King's English, and quite well.
You said you were chased around Grenada?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they had the PT-76 Russian-built armored personnel carrier. That the models they had over there had a fast-firing 25mm cannon in a cupola on top, and they had converted those into just gun platforms. No infantry were inside of them. They went along with them, and all the roads in Grenada are virtually sunken roads for some reason. And they take all these big, huge stones, because Grenada is a rock island, and they make these big walls with it. And wherever they would find us using the roads, because of course that's a quick way to travel in Grenada, is use the roads, and a sunken road is an infantryman's dream. That beats a hill any day of the week. And so everybody's using these sunken roads, and the Cubans found out that, hey, we're all boogieing around all these sunken roads. Whenever they thought they saw us, they just opened fire on those rock walls, just disintegrate those rock walls. And everybody ran twice as fast. Then you start seeing a rock wall disintegrate in front of you with a quick-firing 25mm cannon that blows a hole that big in anything it hits. Yeah, that's a pretty awesome gun. But with any weapon, you got to be trained in it, and your reloading time's got to be short. And when you start reloading a cannon that can shoot 1,000 rounds, after you shoot 1,000 rounds, it takes quite a bit to load another 1,000 rounds. Especially 25mm shells. So there's your opportunity to say, hey, he can't do anything now but drive around circles and try to get away from us. And you take those things out. And they're made out of the same material our APCs are, some dura aluminum that once you catch them on fire, the whole thing will burn. Magnesium, aluminum, or some composition like that. I know an American half-track, if it catches on fire, you'll just find ashes afterwards. Road wheel, treads, but the whole body is just destroyed. It's amazing. It's worthless. It is. Until the Bradley came out, we didn't have we had a square vehicle can go fast on tracks to keep up with our tanks, but that was all it was. You couldn't fight from it, uncomfortable, no suspension system at all. So you're inside there, you get thrown around, you got to hang on to each other. Where Bradley's got your own seat, fighting position, much, much better vehicle. So, but we didn't have any kind of armor, jeeps, tanks, nothing in Grenada. It was a foot war. But that's what we were expecting too. We were expecting, a foot war. Same way in Panama. I don't think there's any tanks in Panama. There's an artillery unit, but they didn't use it. That's stationed there, but they didn't have to use it. Noriega was on the run. By the fourth day, we knew where he was, and that was pretty wild. Listen to the rock and roll. I was 6-8 miles away from where they found Noriega. Boy, I hear rock and roll just louder and louder where I was at. They had that thing blaring. I mean, the decibels were going. And he hated AC/DC. Whenever they play AC/DC and just really crank that thing up, the whole Vatican was bitching about it. All the priests in the Vatican, and finally they got him out of there. He couldn't take it. It was 48 hours of straight rock and roll. Hell of a way to get a dictator out of the Vatican, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, blast rock and roll at him. He'll come out.
So Grenada was pretty short. That was just a matter of days.
Oh,
really,
yeah.
Fighting, and then you have Panama, which is stretched on just a little bit longer.
Well, Panama again was fought in stages. Initially going in there, finding Noriega and cornering him, that was easy. Now you got all of his military forces that are dedicated to him for 20-some years. So you got to convince these guys, hey, you got to get undedicated like now. And Panama being Panama, he had guys over here and guys over here and guys over here. And then once you destroy their communications in order to fight them, that also destroys their ability for them to talk to each other. And so if everybody's surrendering and one team doesn't get the message, and you say, hey, yeah, all your guys surrender, they're like, oh, yeah, we'll fight you. So that drug on for a while, but not very long, to take over an entire country, take over their army, and capture their leader in 30-some days. That's pretty remarkable.
Well, we can go forward a little bit to the Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm, which is not too long again, right after Panama. I'm starting to see a pattern here of like one after another for you.
Yeah, in between Panama and the Gulf War, I went back to Europe. I was again assigned to NATO. This time I had a little bit more important job. Now NATO took deployments a little bit more serious. And I was in a command that was controlling what we call the order of battle. So if we went to battle, this is the way we would deploy and all that. And also now we were finding out what do we have on the ground that's real, because we had staging areas where we had 50 tanks being staged up that nobody drove. They were brand new, but we had ammunition available. So all we had to do is fly the crewmen over there. They could jump in the tanks and go. But also, we had tanks that crewmen had trained in, and the guns had been sighted in on, and those commanders wanted to take those. And so we had tanks coming out of Europe, we had tanks coming out of America, and we were all in Saudi Arabia and just assembled the biggest invasion army since Normandy. Just massive amounts of English tanks, American tanks, German tanks. Anybody can get a tank over there in the desert, and the rest is history. We outflanked them, did the great Hail Mary thing, went up to 59 Hastings or whatever they called it, fought the tank battle against Republican Guards. Marines faked an invasion in Kuwait, never happened. Saddam took his forces into Kuwait to meet him. We circled around behind him, cut him off on the highway, and said, "Now what are you going to do?" Captured all those guys, destroyed the remaining. The highway to hell, we were going to teach them a lesson. There was a lot of military men who said, "Oh, let's get them now so we won't ever reassemble, won't ever invade anybody else." And then a lot of people said, "No, wait a minute, that's just a killing field." And so we kind of met them halfway. We killed half of them and let the other half go. But if you ever seen a picture of what they call the highway to hell, they worked that over for 2 straight days, day and night. And you can see it from miles away, just like an arc light going on. You know, you wait about a half an hour, and maybe the A-10s come in there, and you see them. You hear this burp, 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 and then you see all this burning again. You wait another 25 minutes, and you start seeing these explosions. Somebody else is attacking them. And it just went on forever. You just see them just moving. I was probably, oh shoot, in the desert, 100 miles away, could still see it through binoculars. And it was like, wow, these guys are getting nailed. And then if you look at another direction, you see burning oil wells. So it was a good taste of war. Yeah, you see blowing up stuff and dead bodies everywhere and burning oil wells, and like, well, this is war. Yeah, you don't get better than this. And that was the liberation of Kuwait, you know. And, I don't know what the guys that went into Fallujah and Ramadi and some of those cities that had to fight hand to hand, you know, that's tough. I'd rather follow tanks. You know, that's tank warfare is a much easier deal. But yeah, we were told to get over there, get it all done within 100 days, and boy, the American military picked up and flew. But we were trained to do that. You know, we've been going on Team Spirit, which is sending guys over to Korea every year, and also Reforger, which is sending guys to Germany every year. And so after years of that, just about all the units in the military had deployed somewhere quickly. And so now when we said, yeah, now take live ammunition with you, we're going to do it real, everybody deployed real fast. I know my battalion, we got held up by the personnel people wanting to check dog tags, shot records, double check dog tags, shot records, and some of these little buttholes would say, what's your battle site 0 for your M16? It's like, shut up. It's none of your business, and that doesn't keep me from getting on that airplane. You know, it got so bureaucratic there, you know, for a while. I know my battalion commander came up to me and says, can you stop a lot of this? I said, yeah. And I was pushing these tables and stuff into our deportation line. I said, yeah, they've checked us for dog tags 20,000 times. They've checked us for stuff none of their business. And so, yeah, us deploying over there, we were fast to go. If there was any hang-up, it was, you know, division personnel guys, you know, dreaming up shit. What should we check for? I don't know. And pretty soon it's like, don't check us at all. Don't worry about it. But we had a serious incident with the 101st coming back from the Sinai Desert, where when the aircraft had crashed, I think in Greenland, Newfoundland, somewhere like that, and nobody had records. No, the records were on the same airplane that the men were on. And so the identification of them was hard to do and all that. And so now when you travel, they wanted your records separate from who you were. And so these AG people are trying to keep track of that, and they can't do it. They're not. You got to be part of the unit to do that. And we would make sure that the records for the commander wasn't in the same aircraft. You know, we were dividing up. You know, we made sure the command group didn't all fly together, that the commander and the XO and the sergeant major were broken up. And so if something did happen, we would still be a fighting force. So that was the hardest part about the Desert Storm as far as I'm concerned, is just getting off the ground. But, you know, once we got there, it was a wait game until we could figure out what was really going on. we were hearing all this crap about gas and biological weapon. We thought, bring it on. We got the same stuff, and you're going to regret it when we find you. So that wasn't a threat. And at least everybody I was with was like, we didn't care about that. There was this big thing, oh, he's got the fourth most powerful army in the world, and oh my God, he's got all these Russian tanks, and oh my God, he's got all these Scuds, and oh my God, he's got the biggest Air Force. And I'd been on enough combat briefings to know he's not going to survive. You know, we're going to come grid by grid wherever he's at and just destroy it. You know, I don't care how big he is. And if you've never seen a saturation bomb for anti-personnel, that just destroys everything for miles. You know, so you can't be an enemy army camped out anywhere and have us bomb you and get up and have a good day. I mean, it's just doesn't work that way. So I had no fear there. What my fear was, you know, we would be killing a whole bunch of people there, and then they would be wanting us to do something with bodies or something like that. And oh man, a dead body in a damn desert. And I thought, you know, because somebody's got to clean all that up, you know, when you make a mess. And, you know, of course that didn't happen. None of their infantry attacked us in mass waves. They all surrendered. They were surrendering as fast as they could surrender. And for the tanks that we hit, we blew them apart. They burned up. So you didn't have to worry about any kind of, you know, mass casualties there. The English complained in their after-action report that it took them 6 days to clean up after El Alamein, and that flies were even getting into the city from all the dead bodies out there. They'd left the African Corps out there for a day and a half, and then finally, you know, they had to go out there and get them. And so the English 8th Army talks about cleaning up battlefields. And I'd read the book to book where these guys were like, oh man, you don't want to do that. And so that flashed through my head when I was in the desert. I said, oh man, we're going to be picking up bodies for days out of here. And of course we had bulldozers and backhoes and everything else, but you got to try to identify them and all that crap. And, you know, I didn't want any part to do that. And I thought we'd go through so fast that that their infantry and their cavalry would try to do something, and I knew we were going to kill them all. And so I thought, oh man, I'm going to get in the desert and it's just going to be, you know, bodies everywhere. But it didn't happen. So that was a good thing. And I wasn't worried about a 3 million man army. Now if it's not trained. You can have 5 million men. If it's not trained, they can't fight. You know, you don't want a guy that's been to the marksmanship range 3 times a year with his M16 shooting at you versus a Russian using full automatic that's never fired live ammunition in his life. You're going to win. He's going to go down. And, you know, the combat multiplier now loses, you know, because of marksmanship. And that's the way I looked at the Iraqi army. They couldn't even beat the Iranians, you know. They fought each other until they were both bankrupt. And so I thought, oh, these guys are going to be jumping out of their damn bunkers screaming either Allah or Saddam Hussein or something. They're going to be going nuts. We'll be mowing them down and bombing them and everything else. And then we'll say, all right, the fighting's over. You guys get over here and clean this up. Oh, man, what a regret. And I figured that's what I was going to get involved with, because the fighting was going so fast by everybody other than me. You know, I was just in a Humvee trying to get to Kuwait. And so, yeah, that war went real fast for me. But the fear factor is still there. I was worried about Scuds, you know, blowing us up when I had no idea how many Scuds he had. You know, nor did I thought these guys were smart enough to already pre-zero in where they're going to shoot at. But I guess the Scuds just fly and launch type of rocket. And so we found out that we could shoot down Scuds. That was no longer a fear factor. And then we were told that he had laid 3 million mines. And so for a while we thought, oh, where's all these damn mines at? Found out he didn't do that. And so there was a lot of stuff we heard that didn't happen. And so I know probably the first half of 50 days, first 50 days we were there, we were just dispelling rumors we heard. Practicing chemical weaponry, boy, that was hot. I'll put on all that mop gear and mask and try to survive in that damn thing. I don't think I could have done it. Not for a duration period of time. It's just too hot in there. I know I had my mouthpiece, my gas mask was full of sweat before, up my chin, just sweating out. You can't do this crap. You got to get out of the area. Wherever he uses it, you just get out of that area and don't stay there and try to fight. So that was Desert Storm. I think the only guys that can really say good things about Desert Storm is the A-10 pilots and the tankers and the guys that were involved in the actual. I bet those fighter pilots that were dropping those smart bombs got tons of stories. Those guys went on sortie after sortie after sortie, sometimes 30 and 40 of them. Can you imagine bombing 40 buildings in a month? You land, you go eat, sleep for a while, next morning you're out doing it again, But those guys were great. And we were watching the whole war on TV at the same time we were over there on the war. We watched CNN every freaking morning that we were there, in the war. So you're watching a war that you're involved in on TV, live, real time. And they never came my way. CNN didn't. Some local newspapers did, but that was it.
You mentioned like the anti-war sentiment that you encountered after Vietnam, when you would just tell people that you weren't even over there. How different was the sentiment, like by Americans on large when you came back to the United States after the Gulf War?
Oh, I think American sentiment around the Army probably changed after Grenada. War movies were coming out about Army Rangers. We were getting pro sports guys into the military. The volunteer force helped out a lot, and also we had women in the service now. And, at first they said, oh, all these women are going to be screaming sexual harassment. They didn't. Some did, but, in a crowd of people, they're always going to find oddballs. But I think Ronald Reagan did a lot for the military's reputation. I think he did a great deal. And after a while, I didn't feel as an outcast of any sort whatsoever. Or I didn't. What's some Englishman tell me in Belgium one time? He was drunk. I was at this UN bar with him, and this loudmouth saw my Vietnam patch on there. He was like, "Hey, bloke, you lost that war over there, didn't you?" I told him, "Yeah, that was our Northern Ireland." And man, this guy went nuts. He started the bar fight. Yeah, he was giving me some crap. He said, "Yeah, you American blokes kind of lost that over there, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, that was our Northern Ireland." So there. How many years you been in Northern Ireland now? 40? Okay. You're not winning either, are you? So, yeah, I started the bar fight for that night. But, Vietnam started getting further and further and further away. The longer I stayed in, and when I left Hawaii, there was only 2 of us in the battalion that had been in Vietnam. Me and the sergeant major. We were the only 2 guys in the entire battalion that had been in Vietnam. I was talking to him on the night. We were in F Quad there in Schofield Barracks, and I was talking to him right before I retired. And I said, "Sergeant Major, I think me and you, the only guys, been in Vietnam since all this. And he said, "It doesn't seem like yesterday." I said, "Yeah, in a way it does." But then, the Army's been my life. And so, it feels like comparing success to when you were in grade school. I said, hell, I was a private in Vietnam and a nobody. And now here I am standing on the lanai with a command sergeant major overlooking 1,000 men. I never thought I'd, see that disparity, but I got to see it. The last 10 bosses I had in the Army were generals. And, as a private in Vietnam, a general would shoot, a captain would scare me to death. And, I'd progressed in the Army where I started working on general staff so often that it's like, General who? I know him. So that kind of got to be my deal. There in Hawaii, I worked for a general that I'd known as a colonel 12 years before that. And so everybody's wondering, oh, man, you don't know this guy. Oh, so I've already worked for him, yes. Don't worry. So that was easy. So, when you grow up in the Army, you get used to it, and they get used to you, too. That was all right. Being a soldier coming back to Vietnam, the same way as being a cop today. The American public needs a frustration. The American public is always an angry public. And we were in a bad recession during the last part of the Vietnam War. Shortly afterwards, we came up with this BS gas. Oh, we don't have any gas. Everybody knew that was crap. There was oil fields we never tapped yet. And so the American people, they were going through a lot. And the Army was a nice, easy place to say, well, let's pick on them, And we deserved it. There's My Lai, that's kneeling on the guy's neck. The My Lai massacre was, that was a disgrace on the entire Army. You'd like to be in Special Forces training at Fort Bragg and find out about that. Like, that ain't me. I'm going to go out and kill kids and stuff. So there's enough bad things. Well, then Walter Cronkite, during the Tet Offensive, on live TV, knew that they were going to execute the communist mayor of Saigon, and he allowed them to do it in public on film. And the American people said, man, we're over there in the country executing people by shooting them in the back of the head. Live, on TV. And we don't do that in a war zone. We don't allow that. And so, we were doing stuff over there that now is probably the first time it was on TV instead of on the movie. World War II, they saw it in the movie theaters, what was going on over there. Vietnam, they saw it on Channel 9. And so, you can see some pretty horrible stuff going on Channel 9. And then you get somebody like Walter Cronkite saying, oh, yeah, I think it's all lost. We have to have B-52 bombers to get this thing out of here. Everybody's thinking, B-52 bombers? What are you guys doing over there? So that all goes hand in hand with the times. Yeah, I was worried about way more than people picking on me about Vietnam. And I thought they were ignorant too. And I knew about My Lai, and I knew about way more than they did, way more personal things than they did about Vietnam. We were killing our officers and NCOs that they disagreed with. The practice of fragging came in Vietnam. I know I was involved in an incident where somebody had threatened to kill the commanding officer in a Jeep and all that, and they had us inspect this Jeep. I couldn't find anything. And one guy opened up the gas can, there was a hand grenade with a pin pulled in it, and it had electrical tape wrapped around the hand grenade, so when it went down the gas tank, the gas would eat up the electrical tape, which would eventually pop the spoon to the hand grenade, and it would go off, presumably with the company commander going down the road. And so that's the only incident of an attempted fragging that I know, but it was quite common over in Vietnam, for the draftees to say, hey man, this son of a bitch wants to be a gung-ho idiot and take me out to the jungle on patrol and get killed at, let's frag him. And that happened in Vietnam, where it never happened in any other war, you know. So, and quite often too.
So one of the last things I wanted to ask you about is if you were stationed in Germany.
Yeah.
And if you talked to any German vets while you're...
Oh yeah, yeah. They're hesitant to talk to you about it. And initially, everybody you talked to about fought the Russians. So you ask somebody, "Hey, but you're Army age," and you know, when I was first there, the German soldier would be somewhere in his 50s, and sometimes they'd say, "Oh yeah," you know, and they'd tell you "Dost," you know, or you fight the Russians and all that. And then finally, after you meet some of them, I met a couple of SS guys. I met two of them they knew each other, and they were captured in the Ardennes. They call it the Ardennes Offense, and we call it the Battle of the Bulge. And they were shipped to America, and they went to a place called Camp Cotterville, which is no longer in existence. It was just an Army camp. And these guys worked in the bowling alley for 2 years. And they were released in 48. And so they said, "Oh yeah, we loved it." And these guys spoke pretty good English. And me and another guy met them at a German dump. Because we were going to German dump looking for World War II stuff. Because we would find gas masks, sometimes helmets and stuff that people would be cleaning out their houses and they'd take it to the dump.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you find quite a bit of stuff in the 70s in the German dump. And there was these two guys looking at us, and me and Max, this guy named Leon Maxwell, he'd been stationed in Germany for a couple of years more than I was at. We walked over there trying to speak German to him, and I was giving it my best to say, "Hey, you've been looking at us. Is there anything we found that you like, and all that?" And this guy answered me back in perfect English. I said, "Why didn't you say that halfway through me stumbling through my German?" He says, "I just wanted to hear it." He says, "You're not bad." I said, "Oh, well, I struggle with it." And so we were talking, and we were saying, "Well, we're after helmets and stuff like that." And I asked these guys, I said, "Were you guys in the Army?" And the guy says, "You hate Germans?" I said, "No." I said, "Yeah, I collect World War II stuff." And they both told me they were in the SS. Then I met another guy that was in the SS, and he got pretty severely wounded in the leg in Russia. And got out of it. He was discharged from the SS. And I'd asked these guys that were in the Ardennes, I said, "What about the massacres?" And they both pointed at me and said, "Yeah, what about them?" But no, I met quite a few guys. After you live there, after they see you every day for a couple of months, and they know that you don't have any hostility towards the Germans, and you consider all that history, and especially me, I was like, "Oh, I'm interested in that." And "You guys got anything for sale?" And I'd show them stuff that I collected, and then that freed them up. "Oh yeah. Well, that's how I got my Army uniform. Some gal says, "Oh, I got an uncle that passed all that down. He's dead now and all that, and I got his stuff." And I said, "What do you got?" And she had his tunic and his hat, and a friend of mine got the hat, and I got the tunic. And so that's direct from the World War II veteran. So I'm a GI, and you're still bringing back souvenirs, still bringing them back.
Yeah.
But
did you hear any interesting stories that really stuck with you from the German vets?
No, when I was over there, they had the Beate Meinhof gang going around. And the Beate Meinhof gang was, I don't know what. They were they're armed. They were extremely violent. They were blowing up odds and ends, but they were attacking U.S. military. You couldn't get in any bases without them putting up mirrors under your cars and all that crap, because the Beate Meinhof was bombing cars. And the West German police got after the Beate Meinhof gang, which was probably about 40-some members big because they had a poster of them wanted all over Germany and killed every last one of them. Now, a surviving member of the Beate Meinhof gang was captured by the German police. Now, the German police, I wouldn't want to mess with them. I could see where the German police said, all right, that's it. You know, we're not even put you on trial. You know, storm that building and kill everybody inside. You know, I found it unusual that nobody from the Beate Meinhof gang survived 1977. You know, and so when I was over there, that was a big concern, is internal terrorism. Where I was at, we worked out with more Dutch soldiers than we did English. We were I was by Bergen-Belsen. The concentration camp was 5 miles away from my office. Yeah. I was in Olsen. So you drive right straight down the road, you'll see a sign that says Bergen. You see another sign that says Belsen. And then you'll say, historical concentration camp. All right, you turn off the road, it's all flowers on that. The only thing you see is, I should have got my army album out. These big mass graves, 5,000 toten, 10,000 toten. And they're all kind of parallel. You walk down this path, and those are mass graves they dug for everybody that was in the concentration camp. And they got a little visitors museum. And other than that, it's all flowers. You know, because the English were requiring the Germans to go there every Sunday, you know, to parade the camp. And so they started making picnics out of it. And they planted flowers all throughout Bergen-Belsen, other than the visitor center. And even on top of those graves was all grass. And the graves had German carving in there, you know, and all it said was like 50,000 toten. And it didn't mention Dachau and we're sorry or anything else. The visitor centers, their thing is simply facts. You know, no, hey, we're sorry for all this crap. And the pictures they show is just of the liberation. Didn't show any pictures of how it was going on. Dachau is about the same. Mauthausen is about the same. You know, Dachau and Mauthausen, of course, they had permanent structures there, so they didn't tear them down. They're part of the museum, so you can see how much bigger it was in Bergen-Belsen, especially Mauthausen. Mauthausen was, to me, huge. But the Germans made it real pretty. I'm not kidding you. Now, when I was there, the wall was still there. I never could go to Auschwitz or, well, Treblinka and Sobibor doesn't exist anymore. They got rocks there now and a railroad, because the SS destroyed all that, and the Jews have brought in rocks to represent the villages that people have been killed at.
Well, I appreciate you doing the interview again. Just a happy coincidence that this is going to be Memorial Day. So
yeah,
funny. So
shoot, I saw him interviewing Ed Jocko today. Shoot, he was a SEAL team commander that was in charge of the Panama thing. This dude is a rock. I mean, he's 58 years old and he's still a rock. You know, he's out running with a whole bunch of SEALs on some Labor Day thing today. I couldn't walk past a SEAL right now. So, but yeah, there's a lot of brave men out there. And I think in America there always will be.